Yes, yes, yes. Let's do this. We already got some people here talking about this Wolfram model. I got a whole bunch of new, awesome, cool stuff to talk about today, guys. Um, been coming across a bunch of different stuff. I'm hoping to get some of our other members of the group on here too to come and give us a little update. But reality is, you start talking about real truth and deep knowledge, and the honest thing is, honestly, it's so freaking boring for most people. They can't even understand what you're talking about. That it's like they lose interest. And you'll notice as soon as you start talking about real stuff, your subscriber list goes way down. But that's a good thing because you attract more of like the right people, and you're not just attracting hordes of crowds and just trying to build an audience for yourself and just telling people what everyone wants to hear. And that's never what I've been about. I've always, tried to be the controversial one to, someone's got to say this, or no one's going to say it, kind of a thing. And you know, someone needs to do that more in science. You need to have people kind of stepping forward and sticking their necks out to take those risks for the rest of the community. And it's gotten to a point now, I think, with everything that's going on, I really feel like this is coming to a head. The last 2 weeks, I've gotten probably a dozen more or so PhDs following me on Twitter and following other stuff that I getting into my work. I'm seeing more and more physics students and physics faculty engaging in this material and really digging into and helping out with what I don't call it disclosure. I mean, everyone there's all this other half of this UFO Twitter and everything talking about disclosure, and I really think it's about discovery and more than disclosure, because I wouldn't even call it disclosure. Well, kind of is, because it's like new ideas and new things being disclosed, but it's kind of like the technology is finally we're going to see this in the next 10 years. It's going to take a while for the public to really catch up to everything that's really gone on and is going on right now in the scientific world. There's so many scientists working on on things related to all the pieces we need to build these craft of the future, these craft that run on light, that run on building, run on actual quantum computers that bend the space-time continuum and basically trick the quantum vacuum into thinking that this entire craft is a single quantum particle through the use of these layered nanomaterials and the research that's been done into layered nanomaterials over the past decade or so has really come a long way in the discoveries of the physical properties and how they interact with light has really it's shaped a new pathway to science and helping us to understand a lot of these physics effects from the past, that have been noticed in sort of these different disciplines of propulsion, like the Podkletnov effect, all these different things, because we're bringing these researchers together. And when I created the Falcon Space, I didn't create Falcon Space. I created Hover Brothers. When I created the Hover Brothers, that's when I got involved with Falcon Space, part of this research network and group, and I brought a couple of my friends, people that I had researchers that I had met and been in contact with over the years. I brought all the people that are interested in the science end of this really into this WhatsApp group, and I'm trying to get more. I want to get more of the PhDs and more of the science people out there who are interested in this field of research to really engage and get in touch with me. Through email or whatever, I can get you my WhatsApp contact, and we can start up basically a network. I want to create a network for disclosure and for also data mining and research and being able to connect all these different facets of research together, and also figuring out ways that we can popularize the material or break it down and make it more easily accessible to general audiences that aren't quite as technical as some of the other people that tune into this channel and that we have on our team. That's kind of my job as an intermediary between like the really smart people and the other people that we can maybe try to break this stuff down and explain it to the people who aren't that far, aren't like on this cutting edge of the curve, and aren't like super up to date on all this stuff and keeping track of all this kind of stuff. Like not all of us are, you know what I mean? So, and it's hard for me, even me, to keep track with this. I work a full-time job and I take care of a family, and everything else too. So it's really difficult for me to put in the time that I used to. Although I have that under my belt, I put in a long period of time during my 20s and a decade of, up until now, until when I did have the time. So I have that at least under my belt, and I have that experience and that like knowledge and background to help me. And that's helping me to help out and guide some of the newer people who are coming into this and going to be future leaders in this field, and the future commanders of the star fleets and the future engineers and designers and spaceship builders of the future space fleets. So this is what we're trying to do here, is train these people who are coming into this to know where to look and to know where to find this information, and to welcome you all aboard, because the exotic materials and material science is really going to be the future of building spacecraft. It's basically atomic engineering. You can talk about these craft being perfectly designed, that every system works into one another. Well, this is how you do it, and it's with nanotechnology, and it's with layered nanomaterials. You don't have to go to the atomic level. You can just, nano is fine for most of these effects and most of the things we need to do. We don't quite have to go complete atomic printing. We can use nanotechnology that we're coming up on fast, and we need to basically invest in and develop here at home our infrastructure. 'Cause right now we're in a dangerous place. The stock market's going up, but our cities are burning, and it's this generated bubble. It's more of this wealth bubble, this an imaginary creation of wealth for all the rich people. So that they're basically robbing from us with this fake system that they created, and stealing all the money and hoarding it out to these to themselves, and crashing the economy simultaneously. So it's really scary what's going on, because it also makes me wonder if a lot of these researchers that have disappeared over the years, who have been working on, and I've been researching a lot of the scientists and getting into a lot of the research into who's working on what and when and what they know, and really trying to put this all together. And a lot of these people go dark and disappear in the middle of publishing really good papers on really good research, and then they disappear. And that, I believe that's because they get private funding, and then they sort of hush up. And then, but I'm wondering who that private funding is coming from, and who they're working for, and what they're working on, and for whom, and what ends. So in the back of my mind, I kind of also have this idea that, yeah, we're coming to this realization that, flying saucers or UFOs or whatever the hell you want to fucking call them, they're these things that are seen in the sky, which do not obey conventional laws of physics. And we're basically, our best scientists try to debunk them or scratch their heads or call them whatever, because they don't have the physics to quite understand or describe how they work and how they operate. But that's quickly changing, because now we're understanding through these quantum skin coatings and these what they've been able to do with basically creating a wall of photons, or a wall of light, cohered light, which is all entangled light. They're able to basically create negative mass, active camouflage, cloaking, all kinds of interesting effects coming out of this. And it's really, I've been talking about this for I knew this was going to happen. We're going to reach a point, but it's still, we're not there yet. It's not like I don't believe in this false notion of disclosure that, like, oh, the government's just going to come out and admit to all this readily, and then everything's going to change once they admit to it. No, because it's going to take, most people aren't going to understand half this crap. Um, they're never going to admit to it. One, they're always going to push disinformation and push all the fake crap that you see in the mainstream, in the New York Times or Joe Rogan, or anything that makes it into these viewership with over millions of people. That's all the fake stuff. The real stuff gets very little viewership. There's a very small community, very small amount of people involved. Very small amount of people even have knowledge of any of the information, and it's no result, because this stuff, they wouldn't be able to make a sensational evening news story about it beyond, a couple stupid headlines which were completely underinformed and missed the point entirely and didn't explain anything, because that's all they can do with the mainstream media. They really can't give you deep learning or deep understanding or knowledge of a subject. That kind of stuff you get by, like, really doing research, and now what we're doing right now, getting involved with these people who have done a lot of these experiments. We're meeting more people and growing the team and realizing, oh, there's more people than we realized before. It's a small community, and it's hard to find and access some of these people, and some of them are kind of gone off the radar. But we're getting more, and we're growing the network and getting more and more information and more people every single day. And the more videos that we do, the more people that reach out to us. We are disclosure. We are doing this live. Like, this is it. There's not going to be a government come out with this stuff and admit to it. Here it is. It's here for those who have seeked it out and are here watching it, and you found it now. So here it is. We're here to, and if you don't have the ability to, or the time to go through all this stuff, then you're going to wait for me to find the people that do and get them all together, and try to make some sense out of this all in a public manner, because the stuff that we're getting out in the public isn't, it isn't really what's going on behind the scenes. And as we learn more about, the people involved in this, it just gets crazier and crazier, the more we learn. And I look at all the people that are gaining popularity within, ufology, and kind of like promoting these ideas and stuff. And Hal Puthoff's been one of the major ones. Like, and a lot of people in ufology kind of put him up on this pedestal as like the the ultimate, all paths lead to Puthoff, and all the wormholes keep crossing Puthoff, and and they really don't, though. Hal Puthoff's a very small, portion of all the stuff that I found, the research that I've done. And if you look at Hal Puthoff, he's really not the guy you want to be putting as the poster child for, UFO physics and theory and stuff, because he's done some other work in his past with Scientology and this remote viewing stuff that really has made a bad name for him in the scientific community. And if you read the Wikipedia article on Hal Puthoff, it basically says he's a Scientologist, and that he promoted Uri Geller in the SRI, the Stanford Research Institute stuff. That he's, basically they basically pin him as a pseudoscience buff, like he's the king of pseudoscience, and that James Randi and all these other debunkers, debunked him, and that he's like a pseudoscientist, or an engineer and a parapsychologist is his occupation, I guess. So he studies the alleged psychic phenomenon and other paranormal claims. All right, so yeah, it's just kind of crazy, because he's written some good stuff. The vacuum engineering stuff and that vacuum stuff back in the day was really interesting, and related to a lot of, the polarizable vacuum approach and the stochastic electrodynamics and all that. Very closely related to, he wrote papers with Bernard Hayes, who was, was Lockheed Martin's head physicist, and a lot of other physicists that worked on a lot of these classified SAPs related to what we call the secret space program, or I don't, not I say what I don't really call it the secret space program, but some people like to call it the secret space program. It's maybe just one of them anyway. These are SAPs that were related to, these programs that looked at UFOs and tried to figure out what they were and reverse engineer them. And I guess it's easy to pick a guy like this who can be easily discredited to work on a project like that. Maybe that makes some sense, but it's definitely not the end of the rabbit hole, and you find more people. One of the guys we found today, and I went and shared a couple links around about this and some information around about this guy, and then it immediately disappeared. One of the videos got taken down, and that was rather curious, and that's Dr. Cloud Poher. And I was researching him a little bit, and I was surprised. I was like, oh, I think I do remember him from the Disclosure Project. I believe he was one of the original Disclosure Project witnesses. And he's basically he's head of the French space agency, not head of not head, but he's from the French equivalent of NASA. And he has studied UFOs, and he's believed in a lot of this phenomenon, and he was part of the, Dr. Greer's Disclosure Project back in 2001. But he's been doing lots of really interesting research into the supergravity impulse generator and all that Podkletnov stuff. And this was the video. Oh, it didn't get taken down. Here it is. So he's been doing his own independent research for the French space agency on the Podkletnov experiment. And he got discharges, and that created these gravity impulses. So if there was any question in anyone's mind about whether we're dealing with a real effect or just some other phenomenon that's not well understood, and that this isn't a new effect, I think that doubt can be laid to rest by people who need to get into this and start doing these experiments. There's not enough people are, but it's pretty convincing. And that was 10 years ago that this came out. Still under 5,000 views, and I remember hearing about this guy, and I just recently dug back into his work as I'm researching more and more of the scientists involved in some of this research. And I'll have more on Cloud Poher when I get some more information, and I have the permission to share that information. But very interesting stuff that we're digging into with regards to the validity of some of these other experiments that kind of elucidated some of these effects that we're now beginning to really pinpoint and nail down and connect to a much more firm understanding. So Cloud Poher, this was 10 years ago, and he's been working on this Podkletnov stuff for the French space agency. And he just published a paper recently, and this was sent to me today, actually. Is this the one? Let me just see if this is the one. So, no, I can't do that. Oh, where is this? Let me download all. I downloaded all these. Here it is. Coherent repulsion with mass field effects in a photonic lattice. So he built a photonic lattice and got all these entangled photons, and he got a coherent propulsion effect with negative mass fields. Now this is related to what I've been talking about with that University of Rochester study on the polariton condensates. Really interesting stuff, and this is, of course, you learn about polaritons and what polaritons are by researching a lot of my research into quasicrystals and metamaterials and photonic crystals, and understanding these types of photonic crystals, that that I was like, when I first learned about them, I'm like, this has to be how aliens build their fucking spaceships. Like, this is just way too fucking far out and awesome physics that, anyone who tells me that this isn't how aliens build their spaceships can fuck off, basically, because they're a fucking closed-minded prick, and they're holding back all of humanity with their fucking stupidity. Sorry. All right, join the technicians is here, man. I want to get maybe Mark, if Mark wants to come on, I'm on Skype, guys, or if you want to call me on my phone, I can maybe put you on live if you guys want to call with any updates for the team and any experiments we're doing. This is, I first started, this was just a mess and a bunch of nonsense, and who knows if it worked or was real or not, and I was just trying to, chase little tiny pieces of a puzzle. But now we're really in the big leagues, and we're putting a team together. We're collaborating with the scientists who are working on this, and really digging into a lot of different areas to pull a lot of pieces of the puzzle together. Because what happens to a lot of researchers when they get into this for a long period of time is what happened to people like the Woodward effect, right? The Woodward effect. Or the Mach effect, right? James Woodward, he's got this whole theory of the Mach effect, right? About how this experiments work. So he got a couple of these experiments where he got some results, all right, and he came up with this theory about it. And now, because he's got a theory, all his research kind of went stagnant because he's now just trying to prove his theory and make a legacy for himself and his name. Rather than really try to understand the phenomenon and dig deeper and kind of understand and bring all the pieces of the puzzle together. And there's a lot of scientists out there like this. You'll notice that they discover kind of some of these effects and something related to it, and they come up with their own theory for it, and then they spend the rest of their career trying to push and solidify their theory, to kind of solidify their place in science history, or whatever they're trying to do. But really, they're not pushing the field forward. You're not getting open to new other people's ideas and new ideas, which is sad in certain ways, that we intellectually limit ourselves that way because of our egos, and the ego basically prevents our brain from growing in these directions of trying to understand and realizing that this isn't all I'm not the scientist. I might have I might feel good about myself because I'm onto this before a lot of other people that but some of that's just because I was born before they were. I had an advantage because I was around at the right time at the right place looking into the right things or whatever. I'm not one of the scientists who worked on this. I don't deserve much of any credit, unless I can build a lab and actually do these experiments and put something together and actually build something and produce something. I haven't really produced anything other than a couple videos loosely trying to string theories together and string people along with the research that I was finding and see how they could piece it together and help me analyze it. And that's been a hell of a journey and a hell of an adventure. I'm glad and thankful for all the friends that I've made and all the people that have helped me along the way and brought me to better understandings of things and made me look different ways at different information that I maybe interpreted differently in the past when I was first getting into this and first looking at it and trying to make sense of it all. So I'm now I don't know. I also have met some anyways, how to pimp. Yeah, so yeah, I don't like to I had no horn of my own to toot, and I've done this all out of just my love for the adventure of it all and just my passion for the fact that I cannot just accept this fucking stupid idea that we're trapped on this planet. There's no that the standard model of physics and string theory is all there is to physics, and it's never gonna, we're at the pinnacle of technology now, and we're never like airplanes are like. Our airplanes and rockets are it. That's the end. That's this say all. SpaceX and Elon Musk, like rockets. That's the end. I cannot accept that. I cannot accept that. There is something that in me that has to believe there are there are ways to create a craft that can go interstellar, that can travel faster than this. There has to be some other type of propulsion. There has to be some other type of physics that we're not seeing and not understanding. And I've been on just a personal mission to smash and break the standard model and the chains that bind us to this false sense of reality. We're just basically, pseudo skeptics denying the reality we can all see plain as day in front of us. Because we can't fucking explain it, because we don't have answers. So our answers are to like deny the evidence in front of us that we're not alone. The Drake equations shows how statistically improbable it would be that we're the only fucking things here, and to think that we are is just you're just not using your brain if you think that we're the only things out there and that there's not more, and that they're not something so smart that they look at us like a bunch of fucking ants, pretty much. Not ants, but you know what I mean. They got no problem abducting us and doing experiments on us. It's just a piece of, a guinea pig, a lab rat. So yeah, I believe that there's a way to create warp drives, right, which don't require these massive fucking amounts of negative energies and these crazy exotic states and all this this nonsense that they've come up with in their calculations, based on their theories. There's something else. There's some other way to do this. And I believe that way is through entanglement and coherence of quantum states. That you're building this this entire surface of your craft to be a giant quantum computer that can then interpret and change the nature of the physics that are on the outside of it, as if it and travel as if it were a single particle in space. And that gets down to the real physics of what are particles and what is energy and what is a photon, and where does the photon go, and where does it when the photon's absorbed, where does it go, and when a photon's emitted, where does it come from? And those are questions that even the best and brightest minds in physics don't have real answers for. So we're really getting down to the nuts and bolts of it now, ladies and gentlemen, and I cannot wait for the fascinating decade ahead as we just smash through these almost reptilian fucking overlords in academia and science that are just brainwashing the entire publish with this the entire population of students with this idea that we're never going to get off this planet and we just have to accept things the way they are. And, that anyone who talks about UFOs or tries to figure out how they work or thinks about the kinds of stuff that we talk about and the dreams that we have that are just childhood fantasies, and that we should have fucking forgot them when we were 10 years old and moved on. Well, they can fuck off and go to hell. The same people that probably fucking put us in this stupid pandemic and listen to idiots like Bill Gates. Oh, by the way, I want to play this real quick for people while I catch up on some of the comments here, because there's quite a lot going on in the chat. So this I saw earlier, and this was awesome, and I'm going to play it.
Hello, useless eaters. As your unqualified, non-elected global human health overlord, I'd like to take this opportunity to flaunt my position of power and influence over society and share some of my plans for you and your future. When I amassed my fortune in computer software, I demonstrated that I was willing to lie, steal code, cheat my partners, and exercise monopolistic control to destroy my competitors. Now that I've retired, I can rebrand myself as a humanitarian. With my for-profit foundation masquerading as a charity, I can advocate for population reduction and sponsor mass human experiments with unproven vaccines in vulnerable populations. Like my father, a powerful banker, eugenicist, and Rockefeller crony himself, it's always been my ambition to decide who lives and, more importantly, how many have to die. Whether it's under the guise of climate change or world health, it's really all about controlling and culling the human herd for fun and profit. In November of last year, I hosted Event 201, a war game simulation of a global pandemic. Leaders from private corporations, global banks, governments, and the media got together to strategize ways they could align in lockstep when responding to a worldwide health crisis. Using a coordinated campaign of fear-mongering, intimidation, social shaming, and economic blackmail, we realized that we could get around dangerous philosophies like individual liberty and national sovereignty. With an obedient population, we would be free to implement our own top-down solutions, like forced quarantines, social distancing, contact tracing, and mandatory testing, as a means to seize technocratic control of society. Now imagine my excitement when we had the opportunity to declare our own global pandemic. It was my chance to look like the Nostradamus of public health and to position myself and business partners like Dr. Fauci as the de facto authorities on response and solutions. Through exaggerated doomsday scenarios and computer simulations, our petty control freaks instituted harsh rules and draconian lockdowns. Even after our dire predictions proved false, scared and well-meaning people continued to submit to the arbitrary and foolish demands of their so-called leaders. Having achieved global lockdown and medical martial law, we will continue to hold hostage your ability to congregate, work, travel, or do just about anything until we're prepared to roll out our bigger plan. I'd like to call this Pandemic 1, because believe me, we have others in the works. Our final solution is to have you begging for us to vaccinate, tag, and digitally track each one of you like livestock. Not only will my foundation enjoy legal immunity and trillions in profits, but these mandatory experimental vaccines will move us so much further down the road to absolute centralized global control. If only my good friend Jeffrey Epstein had been here to celebrate with me aboard the Lolita Express. So remember, global citizens, this will end when I say it ends. Could be a year, maybe 2 years, maybe never. I guarantee that if we have our way, it will be at least until you're not able to do anything to stop it. Just surrender your personal freedom and common sense to our fear merchants in government and the media, because none of this works unless you all go along with it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to do some augmented reality spirit cooking with Marina Abramovich. Bye now.
Oh, that was great. There was so many bombs dropped in that. That's definitely gonna get my channel flagged and shadow banned even more than it already is. So whatever. It's yeah. So I'm reading the chat over, and where people are mentioning a whole bunch of these scientists and everything. I was talking to a woman today who does a lot of these diagramming things, and building charts to kind of connect things, and I'd be interested to do that with the list of all the physicists and all the different research that's gone on at all the different universities, all the different types of things, because there's a lot of really interesting things that have gone on, and that would maybe be a worthwhile study from a human intelligence aspect, is really tracing down all these scientists and then figuring out everyone that they've ever published papers with, So you go to Hal Puthoff, right? Hal Puthoff. So go to, like, for example, go to ARXIV. Someone have to sit here and go to ARXIV, right? Go and type in Hal Puthoff, right? And now not all of Puthoff's papers are on XIV. There's some of his stuff that's not you can't find. In fact, it says there's no Puthoff papers on ARXIV. So yeah, so you just have to type in Puthoff. But here we go. And you find all the different papers that have been published, right? So here's one: Bernard Haish, Alfonso Rueda. Those are two names I recognize. But then there's another one, Hiroki Sunhata. So there's another name you have to look up, and then you basically go to all these names and look up everyone that they've published papers with, and you branch out and see what other kinds of things that people are studying, and then you build a map of scientists versus cross disciplines, and sort of kind of you could map out like this whole sphere of you know the all the sphere of the academic research that's gone on, and the from a human intelligence standpoint, I guess, so to say. And that's how I found a lot of these other scientists and a lot of these other papers, and that's why like a lot of these people are noticing with some of this research, like all these wormholes, they keeps bleeding back to Hal Puthoff, and I was like, well, that's kind of how I found all these other scientists is that this is one of the ways I found a lot of these other scientists is not just Puthoff but other names that like that I've looked up, and then you start cross linking the science papers and the scientists and start going through it, and you're able to come up with this deeper understanding of the of the classified SAP state, whatever you want to call it, the secret space program. You know what I mean? So it's good stuff. So yeah, if anyone has technology that they want to share privately, or anyone wants to contribute funding or lab equipment to help us out, then please get in touch with us. And, thealienscientist at gmail.com. You can get my email and let me know who you are and whatever, and we'll get you in touch. And if you want to be added to the WhatsApp group, we can get you in the circle, and basically you can join the team of the scientists, and share your information and your disclosures with the group. And this is a safe way to do it. We're trying to build a disclosure network, kind of. I want to put a website together, which I already have a website, Hover Brothers. But what I want to do is I want to rework this for the page. I want to make a whole one of these tabs, maybe the experiment part, because we kind of have a lot of experiments. It's really I need to update this website, and I need some help with that. But I want to create a database. I need to create a database or an archive that kind of does what I was talking about doing here, with all the cross references and finding, finding who's doing the research on UNRA radiation, who's doing the research on quantum black holes, and who's doing the research on squeeze states and quantum entanglement, who's doing all these different like recurring aspects and themes which we see overlapping in a lot of these classified UAPs. We can kind of connect the science to a lot of the what they were working on before they went classified, and kind of basically backtrack a lot of this stuff. Audio. We got a call going on. We can add some more people to. Yes, we can hear you. You're live. Nope, I don't hear it on my audio looks clean. That sounds like Ed Fouché's TR3B, where it only like negated 80% of the craft, and then they had to provide the rest of the lift with those three thrusters. All right. All right. So, any other updates, guys, for the pour? Yeah. Oh, hold up. What the hell just happened? Jeremiah, hold up. Where's the other call that I was just on? Yo, sorry, they called me on this other thing and it hung up on you guys. I was trying to merge the calls, but it hung up on them. Wow. I'm gonna add Jeremiah and Sky. That's awesome. Oh, I gotta add Sean. Oh, hey, mute your mic because you're getting my delayed feed. Oh, that's freaking awesome. All right, so I was talking to Sky, and I was like, we went in one of the streams that he was on a couple weeks ago, and then we had a talk after he had left the stream, and I really wish we had kept it going to share that information with people. But we were basically talking about all the Stanley Meyer stuff, those water cars, all those super efficient engines that all these inventors were killed over and stuff. And Sky's basically taken that research to this fucking epitome, and further than anyone I've ever met that has done the research into this engine stuff. And really fascinating, the stuff that he's come up with and he's coming up with, and this is awesome. They literally cannot suppress it anymore. No, they won't. Oh, can we freaking you guys? I don't know what's up with my sound. Hold up, let me. You guys can't hear this. You really can't hear that.
Right there, it was built here in Huntsville. Believe it or not, out in the deep south. We built that. I used to drive into work every day and pass the Saturn V, like on my commute into work every day, and I would think, God damn, if Huntsville could build that thing, I'm pretty sure I could do anything. Pretty sure I could do anything if Huntsville, Alabama built that thing. Pass it
All
every
right,
day
so
on.
people were complaining about some of the sound issues through Skype because, and I think I fixed it. So you guys,
Oh,
sweet. All right, yeah. Sorry about that. My desktop audio is not coming through on the. I hate this stuff,
okay.
man.
Well, to repeat, that was the Saturn V in Huntsville, Alabama. It was built here in the deep south. Because some rednecks went to the moon. Y'all, for real, some rednecks won the space race. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Well,
NASA
it's
rocket
all
scientists are actually just a whole bunch of rednecks.
No, for
no,
real.
but they wanted to pick a
Doctors
good
just
place to hide all those Operation Paperclip scientists, and Alabama sounded like it is a really good place, you know.
no, dude. They all live up on Montesano Mountain. They're still there. It's really hard to buy houses up there because they never turn over because the paper clippers just are there forever.
All right, so hey, now that we can hear your sound, Sky, why don't you talk about that device and let everyone know what you're working on
Yeah,
here.
this is a homogeneous charge compression ignition pulse detonation engine with a 300 to 1 static compression ratio. It has no piston side thrust. It can run on any combustible liquid fuel when coupled to a thermal catalytic cracker. Has an 81% thermal efficiency. EGTs right out of the exhaust ports are about 220 degrees Fahrenheit under load. And even though I can hold this up with one hand, even with the other jug on, it weighs no more than 38 pounds and is capable of producing 160 horsepower. Like I said, there's no piston side thrust, so you'll notice this is the connecting rod. When I turn the crankshaft, it remains straight throughout its entire cycle. This eliminates the piston side thrust. Doing so essentially eliminates the number one cause of in-cylinder wear. The way to achieve this is through what's called a Scotch yoke, and if I can get this cover plate off, which can be a bear to do at times, I can actually demonstrate the internal mechanism by which it operates.
Nice. That's fucking awesome.
Basically, when installed in a full-size pickup truck, this would be able to allow you to get over 200 miles to the gallon from crude oil or crushed charcoal and water.
That's awesome.
Do it with anything.
Oh.
Crude oil.
So the objective of this project... Go ahead.
Sorry, what's the ISP, the specific impulse, do you know?
Well, piston engines and shaft engines aren't rated by specific impulse. You're thinking
Gotcha.
of... Yeah, no, they're rated by shaft horsepower.
Okay.
What is the power and the like the RPM range and all that?
So because it's a pulse detonation engine, it has what's called a dynamic and variable torque curve that adjusts itself according to the load. So let's say you have this installed on a large truck, right? And you're cruising down the interstate, and you start to go up an inclined hill. What will happen is typically as the torque load increases, you would have to downshift. Well, that means you have to downshift to keep your RPMs of the engine roughly in the same, but it can essentially multiply the torque because your engine can only produce so much torque and so much power for a given duration, right? So you have to downshift. But here, instead of having to downshift necessarily, if your truck starts to go up an inclined plane, rather than downshifting, what you do is as the driver depresses the accelerator pedal, it will richen the air to fuel ratio. So let's say instead of 700 to 1, it'll richen it down to 400 to 1, down to 80 to 1, down to 40 to 1, all the way down to Stoich. And even though the RPMs of the engine remain the same and you have not downshifted, the torque will spike on the engine, even though the RPMs remain the same, according to the load. So now your fuel consumption is determined by the load rather than by all these various factors that have nothing to do with the load on the engine. Like the throttle plate is one of the tools that people use today because it works and it's very anachronistic. But the problem with the throttle plate is that it reduces your engine's RPM and torque and power by creating a parasitic and artificial load to take the place of a natural load. That's inherently wasteful.
Fascinating.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Someone asked, "Aren't you trying to keep this info proprietary?"
No. This is 80-year-old technology. This actual engine right here is one of only 3 that exists in the world, and this is one of only 3 known to exist in the world. Only 18 were made, and this is straight from the 1930s. So this is old shit.
Old hat.
Cool stuff. So, can you show us the Saturn V rocket? Are you almost there yet? Waiting.
We passed by it already.
Showed it. It's done. We're
That's
past the Space and Rocket Center now.
No, that's all right.
It's on the state.
So, I don't know if
We're kind of skirting around Redstone Arsenal right now. Redstone Arsenal is where von Braun and his team of paper clippers developed the Saturn V and got us to the moon for Apollo. And we just had the 50th anniversary of Apollo. What was it, last year? That was a really big deal here. There were a bunch of events all over town, and a bunch of the original paper clippers were giving talks about their experience with von Braun, the ones that are still alive, which is very few of them. I went to the funeral a few years ago of the original lead of the first ever Tiger team. He's the grandfather of a really good friend of mine. Led the first ever Tiger team here at NASA Marshall. I don't know, rockets are like our thing here. The Arsenal is over that away in relation to where we are right now.
And Huntsville was basically the headquarters. That's where all the Operation Paperclip scientists were brought after World War II, right?
Yeah, the families are still here, and the space program, and we're the Rocket City. It's still very much the propulsion capital of the world. And it's in Huntsville, it's sort of like, oh, your daddy's a rocket scientist, whatever, join the club, so is mine. It's like not that special to be in rocket science here. It's like pretty blasé and boring at this point. It's like everybody join the club. But that's what we do here. We're the Rocket City.
Oh, so now he's got the thing opened up. We can see inside this engine.
Yeah, it took a little bit longer than it normally does, but I'm going to twist the crankshaft on the backside, and you notice that this is the internal mechanism.
That's a Borg motor.
It is a Borg motor. It's an original, one of only 3 surviving. I'm surprised you know what this is.
Fascinating. Yeah. That's like pure torque.
It is. So on the dyno test, one exactly like this that a business partner of mine has, that he got restored. I recently acquired this, so this recent acquisition means that between my business partners and I, we have all known surviving Borg engines. And on the dynamometer, he increased the RPM from 6,000 RPMs to 12,000 RPMs in 1 revolution under load.
Beautiful.
How many horsepower are you getting out of that?
So this is a half-liter engine that's 30 cubic inches. That's 492 cc's, and this can produce up to 160 horsepower.
So where are you testing that? Facility are you testing?
I'm sorry, you cut out. What was the question?
I'm sorry, I was saying, where are you testing that? What kind of facility are you testing that apparatus in?
We have our own testing facilities that we're operating out of, which is basically our backyard shops.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool.
Fascinating, man.
But yeah, this is an original.
With the grant that you were looking for, the $2 million DoD grant.
It's $2.5 million, but that's technically for an unrelated project. But once we're done with the project, we can use all the equipment to basically make more of these and improve upon the design. So, in fact, I can actually show you guys the original crankshaft. So that has a new crankshaft installed. This is the original crankshaft, and these engines were notorious for breaking crankshafts. And in fact, you can see here where it cracked. And this is a flaw in the design, because in order to slip the triple slipper bearing that Russell Burke had designed over, weave it through and around the webs, so the inner bearing is split, and then the middle and the outer bearing slips over the crankshaft with these counterweights removed. And the problem is that the webs have to be incredibly thin in order to allow that bearing to slip over and thread over there. So my solution, if I put these into mass production, is I'm going to basically take this counterweight, as you can visualize it here, and I'm going to make it continuous all the way around and slip a massive roller bearing over it to turn it into what's called a tunnel crank. This will essentially make it indestructible.
Fascinating. That's an excellent approach.
Well, and the thing is that if I break a crank pin, it's a $5 part that's removable with a bolt rather than your whole crankshaft. So, what's it take to drill a hole through a piece of 4340 tool steel?
So we're actually passing here the Martin Road exit, the Martin Road gate, which I think is gate 2 for the Arsenal. And this is the NASA side gate of Redstone Arsenal. It's like the NASA side and the Army side. And this is the NASA side of the Army. Yeah, we just passed it. But dude, if you wanna get like a NASA Space Act agreement or something like that, you can swing a deal where you can use NASA test facilities through what's called a NASA Space Act agreement. And I know the guy that's in charge of setting those up. If you're interested, I'd be happy to introduce you. But there's all kinds of facilities here that you can get access to through a Space Act agreement. And a lot of times you can set it up for basically free, where you just kind of trade, right, for no money exchange, where you can use their facilities. And usually they want access to the data, but they're not going to claim the intellectual property. They just want the data that they want to learn. But we can talk about that offline if you're interested.
Yeah, I'm open-minded to it.
Yeah, I'm don't know how
my dad used to run the combustion physics lab here at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, and they did all kinds of rocket ignition switches and just all kinds of stuff in the combustion physics lab here.
Right.
He ran that for like a decade or something.
A lot of that's for jet engines and stuff.
Chambers and facilities that are hard to get a hold of.
Yeah, they have that big vacuum.
You can just sign a NASA Space Act agreement and get access to them.
They have a giant vacuum chamber there, don't they?
Well, they've got wind tunnels and vacuum chambers, and I don't know. It depends on what you need.
That'd be great for doing Bifeldt-Brown in the vacuum. But yeah, we should talk about that in more detail. But there'd be a lot of experiments I'd want to do, a little bit different than a combustion engine or what's it said? Is it But it's cool we're mixing the two because some people are getting confused in the chat. They're like, "Oh, what's up with this? Like, you're talking about building spacecrafts and you're going to sell this combustion engine to NASA?" It's like, well, no, you're misunderstanding this. We're trying any technology that can break us out of the current cycle. We're trying to and cutting edge and a 200 mile per gallon car engine is definitely something we could really use right now. So.
I might also add that even if we discovered anti-gravity and we got that all covered, we're still not going to space. You gotta take care of the habitat. You gotta take care of food. You gotta take care of CO2 levels in the air, which the International Space Station is still having major trouble with getting the CO2 levels at a safe level. There's a lot of ancillary stuff surrounding spaceflight that are just beyond the anti-gravity. And that's where Sky comes in with his massive. He's planning on doing a thorium reactor after this. Thorium reactors are probably what's going to power the mothership. So,
energy is a key problem in the and also.
We actually need multiple paradigm shifts across multiple industries in order to have a persistent, comfortable, and safe presence in space for human civilization. Right now, like Elon is building the rocket that's going to go to Mars, but what's he going to do when he gets there? You gotta live. You gotta live when you get to Mars. Like, there's multiple paradigm shifts that need to happen beyond propulsion for us to really be persistently present in space.
Yeah. One of the biggest problems is just what do we do with all the waste, over long trips and stuff, and how do you perfectly recycle the waste the way that and efficiently the way that an Earth biosystem would.
Yeah, what are you gonna do with the waste? But beyond that, what are you gonna eat? What are you gonna eat? Where are you gonna get your fresh water? How are you gonna maintain your atmosphere? What are you going to do about the long-term effects of low gravity on the human body and the deconditioning that happens to your body and the fact that your muscles atrophy when you don't have any gravity?
I'm busy right now. Yep.
So really, we're behind. We're massively behind where we should be and where we could have been if we had budgeted our money differently over the past, I don't know, 50 years.
If Tesla's bloodline hadn't been replaced with the Rothschilds or whatever, I love that meme. It's like, if we didn't have these centralized international owning classes, sort of deciding how we manage all the money in a sort of mindless corporate automata, we wouldn't be in the problem. We wouldn't be where we are today. We would have all those things that they dreamed about in the '60s and said we were going to have and stuff. It's really sad.
Wasn't it Mark? Sorry. Was it Mark Twain that said that they ride the backs of the weak and helpless in order to stay rich? Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
We very much underinvested in space. And that was a real big mistake because if we had invested aggressively in space, it would have paid for itself a million times over by now. It would have produced profits that exponentially outpaced the cost. But because we were conservative with the funding for space, we're multiple decades behind where we should be right now.
I'm of the opinion that nothing we do for space travel is going to mean anything unless we get away from chemical-based rockets. Chemical-based rockets are slow, inefficient, very expensive, very dangerous, and chemical liquid hydrocarbons, though they have super high density for most of our applications that we use terrestrially based, they barely have enough energy density to get us off this rock to begin with.
Yeah.
So there's two ways moving forward away from chemical-based rockets. The first way is an Orion drive, and if you're okay with bringing a whole new meaning to the phrase blast off, then it's super economical and is way better to build an Orion drive. Now, you could argue that it's not politically viable because it requires the construction of thousands of Kasaba howitzers, which are nuclear-shaped charges, but, to hell with what the normies think. That's what I say. The second method is, of course, electrogravitics or anti-gravity or whatever you want to call it, which the second method, of course, being the preferred method, is so bleeding edge and so out there, and just requires a shit ton of throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. So we basically use an Orion drive for now to work within the solar system until we can find a stopgap to essentially a stopgap to develop electrogravitics. Now, the Sapphire project, if it works the way Dr. Don Scott and Walt Thornhill says that they do, we could actually go to a pure electric-based thrusting technology, and that would be very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
But that's another subject entirely.
Well, if you think about it, the last major paradigm shift that we had in hardware technology was the invention of the integrated circuit, which led to the computer. And damn, that was like 50, 60 years ago. What's the latest paradigm shift since the integrated circuit? Can you name one? I can't.
No,
AI,
technology.
Software. I'm talking hardware paradigm shift.
Yep, technology has been stagnant for decades,
Yes.
and it's largely been stagnant for a plethora of reasons, but the biggest reasons, at least as far as I can tell, are regulatory capture and red tape makes it impossible to exist as an entrepreneur. Thus, everyone is forced to work for a large corporation, almost everyone, and this stifles innovation because the garage innovators physically cannot break into the market because they have to spend tens of thousands of dollars just to sell their products, which of course means they just don't do
impossible.
it. Yeah. I have a wood stove manufacturing company, and I have to spend literally $40,000 just to break through the red tape to introduce a product to market. Who has 40 grand sitting in their bank account? Not a lot of people.
Yeah.
I would argue that the major impediment to innovation has been simply program cancellation in the military-industrial complex, because I really can't tell you how many one-of-a-kind prototypes, first in the world, just paradigm-breaking prototypes that I've seen be developed here in Huntsville. They make a prototype that's never been seen before in the world. It works the first time they turn it on, exactly the way they predicted it would. And then guess what? Cancel. Over and over and over and over again. I mean, if the prototypes that I've seen had been continuously funded, my peers that I graduated high school with should be tweeting from the moon right now about how the cafeteria food on the moon isn't really that bad. Like, that's where we should be right now, and we're not. Why? Because they developed all this shit already, and they canceled it. Over and over and over again.
Well, it's even simpler than that, right? So it used to be, if we turn the clock way back to the Industrial Revolution, companies had to constantly go out of their way to find new innovations so that they wouldn't be rendered into obsolescence. And regulatory capture has made it to where companies no longer have to do that. And now, in fact, it's easier to stifle new innovation than it is to embrace it, and cheaper. And so companies have just been doing that for the last 80 years.
Yes. The innovation is there. I've seen the technology. The technology is easy peasy, lemon squeezy. What's difficult is the funding. The funding is difficult. The technology has already been invented and canceled over and over again.
Yep. Well, and the only reason why, is because investors in the modern regulated zeitgeist say, oh, we can't build that. That's risky. We don't know what the market's like. We don't know about the regulations. We don't know about this. We don't know about that. And so they just keep things the way they are because it's safe, because nobody's going to compete with them, because the market's captured and regulated, so nobody can. So are you familiar with a man by the name of Preston Tucker? Preston Tucker was an auto designer in the 1940s, and he developed what is colloquially and now known today as the Tucker 48. 50 Tucker 48s were built, and his company was shut down by various bureaucratic institutions and rules. And but the Tucker 48 was very advanced for its time. It used a boxer type engine based off of an old helicopter design. What? It had a welded tubular steel roll cage for the for safety, which even modern cars don't have roll cages. That's super advanced. It had a lot of cutting, bleeding edge shit, and it was being produced at a lower cost than the big three, and it was objectively superior at a lower cost, and they shut them down because it's easier to shut them down than it is to compete. And so that's what they do now, because it's safe.
Yeah.
So Mindbent made a comment in the text chat about cold fusion. So cold fusion is cool, but you still need deuterium and tritium for cold fusion reactors. And the best way to make cold fusion, or best way to make deuterium and tritium, is to breed it in a fast spectrum reactor. I recommend a molten chloride reactor running on thorium, but any fast spectrum reactor will do, because then you can take the excess neutrons and passively produce deuterium and tritium using that excess neutron economy from a fast spectrum reactor. So if you want cold fusion, great, but to get cold fusion, we have to drop the price of tritium down from $15 million a pound. And if you do that, it makes fusion experimentation a lot cheaper.
I found a patent for fusion which used only deuterium and xenon. It was a German patent. I had to translate it all. And
what is it? Xenon? Xenon?
Yeah, xenon. Sorry, I mean, and sorry, forgive my Canadian accent.
That's fine.
And I just want to make sure I had that right.
Yeah, xenon and deuterium.
So deuterium is still $12,000 a pound. So it'd be nice to drop that price even further.
Well, yes, but if you do enough searching around, I'm sure you could find a method of creating deuterium at a far cheaper cost than what they're doing now.
It's the energy required to do it, because you have to run the isolation experiments over and over and over and over again. Right. It requires so much energy to produce just such small amounts of the deuterium.
And why produce deuterium by separating naturally occurring deuterium from the regular water? Why not just put a blanket of hydrogen around the stainless steel vessel of a fast spectrum reactor, like a fast spectrum MSCFR, right? And then you can passively breed deuterium and tritium at no extra cost using the excess neutrons from an MSR that would be wasted anyway. We can turn mercury into gold. We can turn iron into things like noble metals for catalysts and all sorts of shit. So we just have to focus on fusion because we can't talk about fission. That's dirty. That's politically incorrect. Fission, even in a world where cold fusion is cheap and available, fission still has its place because you're able to do other things with it other than just make energy.
Yeah, like covalent bonding of unnatural elements that could never combine.
Yeah, all sorts
of
stuff.
Sense.
All sorts of stuff. And not only that, but the price of monazite sands go through the floor once you have a reactor that can run on thorium. And now, because the number one cost of manufacturing things like photovoltaic, be they monocrystalline or amorphous silicon, right? The number one cost of manufacturing solar panels is a lot of the materials cost, right? Because the glass is cheap. The glass panels on the outside, above the photovoltaic cells, the glass is cheap. The big costly part is the cells, right? And because the cells are, there's a lot of automation involved, they're basically built similarly to microchips and, computer chips. So a lot of the cost is the materials because it uses a lot of expensive rare earth elements. And our rare earth elements come from monazite sands, and monazite sands are highly contaminated with thorium. And we don't know what to do with all this thorium. The mines don't. Right, so all we have to do is build a reactor that runs on thorium, produces a metric buttload of power,
That is
and then
genius.
now the cost of monazite sands go through the floor, and by extension the cost of rare earth elements go through the floor. And so now things like permanent magnet alternators and motors, linear generators and motors, neodymiums, hastelloys, cadmiums, nickels, all sorts of shit, like nickel alloys, all sorts of shit goes through the floor, and solar panels specifically would become so cheap that when you go to replace your roof, it would be like 5 or 10% more than the cost of just putting up asphalt. So you may say, well, screw it. I'll just make my roof out of solar panels because the glass is super chemically stable. It's going to last a real long time and it's pretty durable. And if it's thick enough, it'll withstand even hail. And so now you get what's called a positive feedback loop, and that's how humanity reaches type 1, because now it's easier, it's just as cheap to put in materials that passively generate more energy to get. It's just as cheap because the energy is cheap, and once the energy gets cheaper, it becomes cheaper to be more energy efficient, and once you're more energy efficient, it makes energy yet cheaper, and you get this positive feedback loop, and bam, now humanity's type 1 and beyond. Make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's where we need to be, man. That's where
Well,
we're trying to get to.
and that's why I think a lot of the brakes on this new technology has been staked in the ground. Because whatever special interest groups, the Illuminati class, or elites,
Do you
whatever you
think
want
we
to
need to
call them.
when after disclosure happens, we need to take all these people who were holding us back and have their DNA tested to make sure they're not reptilians? It's like
Well,
I
holding us
believe
back
that.
on purpose, man. Like I don't know. I was just having this whole thought today to arguing with some of these people about. It's like, is it really just like our stupidity and ego that's holding us or is it like because it's almost like there's a nefarious force at work here? It's just like it's too much
it could
to.
be a combination.
You know what I mean? It's like.
It could be a combination. No, like if after disclosure happens and we reach type 1, then basically we need to take the Pacers and the Rothschilds and the all the Ilds and family bloodlines and shit that's been holding humanity back and deliberately trying to enslave the entire human race to masturbate their ego. We need to take them and their stupid fucking bloodline, the precious bloodline that they care so much about, and we need to chop.
Yeah, we just need to sever it from humanity altogether because it's probably they're protecting their alien. They're probably that's why I'm like starting to give some credence to these ridiculous what I once called these insane theories. It's like maybe it is, dude. Because it's like how do you explain that these people have been around and in power and holding this onto secret knowledge and just trying to enslave us all with this secret knowledge and these secret societies for so long? It's like, how, I don't know.
Are you familiar with the works of Dr. David Jacobs?
Dr. David Jacobs. That name sounds familiar. Hold on a second here.
So he's a researcher. He's one of the few people to have received a PhD due to his PhD thesis was on ufology. One of the very few people to have received a PhD whose PhD thesis is anything related to ufology at all. And he has assembled a team, and for many decades he has interviewed several million people, him and his team.
Yeah, this is that guy. Yeah, he was connected with John Mack. Yeah, Johnny Mack from Harvard. Yep. I know that guy. Cool.
Yeah,
Go on.
and so I think that the Illuminati class, the elites, whatever you want to call them, I don't think they're related to extraterrestrial entities, as far as I can tell. I think so the Pacers are probably the most influential family at the top. It's probably not the Rothschilds, the Pacers, but it doesn't really matter, right? I've deliberately gone out of my way and looked for any connection or link at all between any of these dynastic family bloodlines and the Majestics and the various other UFO clandestine organizations. As far as I can tell, the Majestic or whatever you want to call them, there's no connection at all to these Royal Illuminati class bloodlines. I'm thinking what may have happened is whatever military base that once was basically decided to take this technology and create a breakaway civilization and tell the rest of humanity to fuck off. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I could almost see that as happened. You know what I mean?
Well, think about this, right? So there was a CIA officer that on his deathbed was basically relaying a story during the first BRAC commission, which is the base realignment assignments and shits. And he and his other people he was assigned with went to Area 51, or what we colloquially refer to as Area 51, and they said, you can't be here. It was like, well, we have orders from the president. This is a BRAC commission. This is a military base, and so we're coming here because this is a BRAC commission. They said, no, you can't be here. And they go back and they say, well, Mr. Dwight, well, Mr. President, this man, mind you, this wasn't any president. This was fucking Giga Chad, General of the Army, Dwight D. Eisenhower. And Dwight D. Eisenhower says, whoa, wait. What do you mean they say? Well, here, let me write you up some new order papers. Tell them that, specifically for this base, you absolutely can be there because for the BRAC Commission, for that base specifically, that way there's no communication. So they go back and they say, nope, doesn't matter. President doesn't have clearance to be here. They go back to POTUS and say, Giga Chad General Eisenhower, now president, throws a shit face up. I don't have clearance? You tell them that I absolutely do have clearance, and if they have anything to say about that, I'll get the 3rd Army from Colorado to tear that base to the ground. And of course, they let Giga Chad, General of the Army, now POTUS, Dwight D. Eisenhower, into the base. And he looks at everything. He says, the Soviets cannot find out about this. Super top secret. You guys keep doing what you're doing. Bye. And 50 years later, now President, at the time serving President Clinton, who was in office at the time in the 90s, was briefed by Dr. Stephen Greer, of all people. And it's crazy, right? That the POTUS wasn't able at the time. So whatever organization was operating out of Nevada and wherever else, basically their influence and power was able to grow over those 40 years.
Is this according to Dr. This isn't from that anonymous guy, right? So about the sending in the 1st Army and all that with Eisenhower and all that, right?
No. You can actually. This is from I forget the man's name, but
because he copied that from somewhere else. Then, all right. So
yes, this was from a verified dying CIA agent that was. Anyway.
No. I think you're talking about we think we're talking about the same guy, and you said that he was a verified CIA agent, and I don't think that he was. I think we're talking about the same guy. This is the anonymous agent deathbed confession. If it's the same guy, because this guy right here. It was with Richard Dolan originally did it, and this is on Jeremy Corbell's channel actually. So is this the guy that where it's like the can you see him and hear him? I don't know if you can see him and hear him.
There's a delay.
Yeah, you'll see it in a second and hear it in a second. But and Jeremy Corbell did a thing on it too, which was funny. But anyways, that guy's name is we have that guy's name. We looked him up. We found his deathbed, the whole certificate. I did a whole breakdown on him, and I have a whole. I can send you a whole thing on this video. I really should repost the video and do a breakdown because we did a breakdown of everything he said and some of this. I had another military historian help me with this. So there's some details that you might have wrong in that about that 1st Army coming in and Eisenhower's role and but I don't know. Continue with the story though. Anyways, it was an interesting story.
Well, basically, according to Dr. Stephen Greer, and Stephen Greer said this himself, so it's on him whether or not this is true, right? Yeah. This is all speculative anyway. We can't falsify a lot of this shit. But according to Dr. Stephen Greer, the Clintons were scared for their life. When the Clintons, at the time serving president, who are scared for their life. We have a rogue agency with God knows what capabilities.
Have you guys heard of the Luz patents?
Yeah.
Like Hendrix Luz? Okay,
Hendrix.
around that time, he created this technology that was able to read minds and program people, and even put like images into people's heads. It was pretty wild. I researched it for a bit there. I don't know if you guys heard it, but it was pretty much put in place around the times when the Clintons were around.
How do you spell his last name?
Loos. And I believe it's Hendrix, if I recall visually properly.
Hendricus.
Well, just go LOOS in the patent search. Like say Google patents.
It's
That'd be
Hendricus.
perfect.
Hendricus loose.
Is it?
I think so. And his nervous system manipulation devices. Yeah, this has got to be the same guy.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
this like literally can like turn your cell phone into a mind control device, which I believe actually was the purpose for it. And it's also sponsored by DARPA and the Navy.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Well, remember when I did the whole 5G thing, I was talking about some of those things that were put out and the reports that were put out. And it's interesting that some of those frequencies, I remember reading about some of this stuff, and I didn't see that included in some of those reports on the dangers and stuff. They might be in there. Some of these effects are well known and documented, but yeah, basically have a cookbook for all these frequencies and all the weird effects that they have. There's certain frequencies that can do some really weird nervous system effects.
Well, maybe like if they were fearing for their lives, maybe this is like the reason why they realized technology like this is being rolled out.
Well, this is
just
I
a
don't know.
postulation.
It might have been. I don't know why they feared for their lives. They might have been just really scared of the whole thing, the whole idea of aliens and that, I don't know. Maybe just I don't know what they necessarily be afraid for. If you're fear for your life, you're obviously afraid of being killed by something or someone. Was that they're afraid of the aliens or afraid of the intelligence agencies? You know.
The impression that Dr. Stephen Greer was left with is that they were afraid of whatever rogue intelligence agency this has now become. But whatever it is, as far as I can tell, it is neither private nor government. It is not a secret government program. It is not a private deal. It is its own thing. It is rogue. It is without any oversight, or there's no oversight. There's no there's no accountability. It's rogue.
Interesting.
Which makes sense, honestly.
Right.
Let's say that you're a base commander and suddenly you have alien technology. Well, just tell everyone else to fuck off. What are they going to do?
So you guys understand, obviously, electrostrictive hydrodynamics, which is what Brown was working on, right? And magnetohydrodynamics as well, right?
Yep, electrohydrodynamics and magnetohydrodynamics, ways of manipulating fluid flow using electromagnetism.
Yeah, so Charles Proteus Steinmetz created this book years ago that used a certain mathematical algebra that worked with like 1 or 2. I think it was 0 and 1. I mean, sorry, my bad, if I remember correctly. But Eric Dollard is completely on that. And I believe that the two combined would create the perfect magnetic and dielectric field. And I believe that understanding, because like he did an engineering, not a science or a theory, he actually made it practical. Like you read his book and you work with it, and like literally you can construct anything. And I believe like because like I don't know if you hear like these stories where like for example, like authoritarian or what am I thinking at? So like people who have this idea that they are far more superior than anyone else, they're gonna like ignore a book from a hunchback. So like I think these scientific books actually slid past them. and was actually put into print. Yeah, like you can see here, there's plenty of people. There's Albert Einstein, which he was friends with.
The hunchback
Nikola
cripple.
Tesla, he was friends with.
Yeah.
Edison, he was friends with.
Steinmetz right
Um,
there.
Yeah, and also, like, like if you actually look at the electrical systems that are not discussed about, like the impulse
Is that Oppenheimer?
system and the Alexander system, which Eric Dollard describes in perfection. Like, he even has analogies for it, like analogs, that he can actually grab a rope and tell you exactly how these waves work. It's pretty fascinating.
I can name some of these guys. That's definitely Wolfgang Pauli.
Oh yeah, man! This guy is for serious. I am 100% telling you, man. This guy is so on the ball. Like, I'm telling you, there's notes and like everything you could possibly think of, like letters between people, newspaper articles on people talking about like Albert Einstein talking about Steinmetz, and Tesla talking about Steinmetz like they're best friends. Many.
Yeah. This is really cool stuff. So Steinmetz solids. What the heck is that?
Yeah, so the Alexander system, which Eric Dollard talks about all the time, claims that he removes the velocity of light so that everything is instantaneous. So like you can literally pop in another area instantaneously. You should really check him out.
This is interesting stuff, dude. He's talking about all these shapes and then doing like shape interfacings, which is like key for doing warp drives.
Dude, so like what I explained to you, remember, 0 and 1, all of his mathematics, he ended up working like he was a master mathematician, but he was doing it for engineering, not a theory, not science, for engineering. Like
no,
literally
that is science.
hands-on.
Make no mistake. No. Modern academia has turned air quote science into being something that nebulously only exists on the chalkboard.
Yeah.
Reality is that actual science involves physical experimentation and the scientific method, which inherently goes back to physical experimentation. It's not chalkboard bullshit that people like Stephen Hawking have turned it into.
Exactly.
And engineers like Ralph Jurgens and many others that I could name off are going to be what smashes academia's stranglehold on air quote science.
So all of Steinmetz's books are free on archive.org. Nice. And I mean, that's all like 9 of them. And the most important
he said he wrote 13 books here on Wikipedia.
Yeah, and the most important one you'll ever want to learn from, I'm trying to find the book now because I had it out earlier. It was like electrical impulses and I think disturbances, I believe. I can't find the book right this second.
It's crazy how like everyone hears about Einstein, but no one hears about like all these other guys like Steinmetz and even that's the other one Wheeler.
Yeah, but see, you're missing something. Einstein created relativity, which has held the advancement of human technology back by decades. So
exactly. This is why I'm trying to get back to the basics, because you actually see patents from back in the day that will literally like you're wondering, where did they get this idea from? How could they create such a thing? Well, if you actually go through his books, you actually realize that the speed of light is the rate of inductance. And I believe it was the dielectric inductance, if I actually recall from Ken Wheeler. I read so much that my brain can't hold it all.
No, it's John Wheeler is the one I'm talking about, not Ken Wheeler.
John Wheeler. Okay, yeah. I have actually
John Archibald Wheeler.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I have a lot of information from him as well, like PDF files and all that stuff. Like I literally, I worked from the ground up. I went right back to like the very beginning and got every piece of information to understand what the hell is going on and why they're hiding it from us.
So I've been, someone asked me if I think inertia could be related to the quantum phone 0 point field. I've been following this guy, this guy Mike McCulloch, quantizedinertia.com. I've been following his work a lot lately, and he seems like he's really onto this stuff. You can check out quantizedinertia.com for his website, and there's a list of I think 28 papers on here right now. There might be a little more or less than that. I'm not quite sure, but he's gone through a lot of the proof, showing basically how and there's also there's a bunch of groups actively working on tests, and there's a lot of people that were found out about this on the lockdown, and when they go back to school in the fall, there's going to be a lot of groups working on replications and toying around with this technology. So I believe we're going to be getting somewhere, and we're getting pushed further along. But it has to do with this Casimir effect and this UNRA radiation, and this idea of this that basically this eliminates this thin whatever is going on there. This effect, it creates an asymmetric effect on one side of the thruster, which creates a thrust effect. And it's basically he's describing a new way of describing what inertia is and how inertia arrives from the quantum vacuum. How that basically it's. You feel inertia, you feel resistance of your hand moving through the air. Is what you're feeling is basically the pushback of the UNRA radiation against what was there from your. It's kind of like this pushback effect.
That is exactly correct.
No, it's not. I'm explaining it terribly, dude.
No, I understand, but you're exactly right. It is a pushback. So. A moving charged particle like an electron or a proton, and yes, technically neutrons are charged particles. They just happen to have a magnetic moment because their charge orientation, because they are dipolar instead of monopolar like electrons and protons. Their dipole axis is in constant motion. And so it does have a magnetic field. It is called a magnetic moment because it's really hard to observe exactly where it might be. Anyways, all of these charged particles, in order to change their relative position in space compared to all other electric fields produced by all other charged particles, they must compress their, if you will, light speed bubble. So imagine that you have a ball floating in a pool and you push it in one direction. You get these compression waves on the front and you get this wake on the back. Well, if you have a charged particle and you accelerate it, the energy bubble that will have to reestablish itself, the electric charge that travels and tells other charged particles, hey, I've moved, well, that can only travel as fast as the speed of light if the magnetic and electric fields are aligned at 90 degrees. So what basically happens is the charged particle compresses its own electric charge where it's now got more positive charge in front of it if it's a proton moving in the direction of its acceleration and less positive charge behind it. As a result, it experiences a resistance to acceleration because it has to push against its own field, and the density of its own field is determined by the background radiation. So this is where the ZPE comes into effect. What determines the actual density or size of an electron or a proton or any other charge? It's the amount of energy it has in its local volumetric space compared to the background radiation. You remove the background radiation, the particle will technically grow. You increase the background radiation, the particle will technically shrink. Increase the background radiation, the same thing happens with time. Mass equals energy. So if you add EM energy into any volume of space, that EM energy, well, it's a traveling wave, as it's being radiated, technically has an equivalent mass because it is traveling energy. And because it's traveling at the speed of light, we complete the equation, and that mass energy we can actually push against. So yes, electromagnetic waves like radio waves do have mass, and you can use them to propel objects or push against.
Yes, that's very key point, and that goes back to this a question that someone posed to me. One of my friends posed to me about a year ago, and that kind of led me in some of these directions. He posed the issue of destructive interference, right? It makes no
Yeah,
sense.
destructive and constructive photonic interference exerting forces on surfaces with metamaterials. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, there's that, but there's a lot to do with interference and destructive interference, because wave interference is not quite exactly how they, it doesn't exactly go the way that they teach it or describe it, here. There's a little bit more going on, and I want to explain that. This is how it was. This is how it was forwarded to me. Is the idea is that if you have two photons that are 180 degrees out of phase, they will destructively interfere, and they'll basically cancel out, and you get nothing. All right, but what happens is each photon should have had momentum. You have there's a momentum associated with each photon, and
Exactly.
that
The photon is
momentum was
effectively a transfer of momentum from the electron or proton motion that created the quote-unquote
exactly.
photon in the first place. And that's just a momentum transfer. That's literally what a photon is. It's not a quantized particle of an exacting size or anything like that. It's not a specialized packet. It's not this individuated unit of energy. What it is literally is the energy signature, the electric charge field of an electron or a proton suddenly changing position from one place to another.
Yes.
And as a result, the repolarization of space that has to take place because the electric charge field has suddenly changed in a different direction now equals a momentum transfer which all other electrically charged particles will react to. Now, when one electrically charged particle does react to it and absorb the photonic energy, it creates its own motion by absorbing that photon, and as a result balances out the equation for all other particles around it, and that's what gives us a single particle interaction, because the motion of the first interaction catalyzes the motion of all the other interactions, so that the average is that we have a epicenter,
right, and that it's catalyzed, and then it doesn't require what Wolfram requires in this massive need for constant increasing complexity of calculations in his model.
Yeah, and it's not really required because Maxwell figured this shit out. Excuse me. In the ninth. I mean, come on, guys. This Maxwell was, he was a long time ago, and he has equations that have been systematically ignored by academia because, and here's the honest to God truth, they're too complicated. Yeah. And because of that, and I have a specific story for that. Eric Dollar will tell you the same story back on the topic, which Eric Dollar is popular in the chat today and popular on the topic. Eric Dollar tells a fantastic story about how Heaviside decided to take Maxwell's incredibly complicated non-zero equilibrium equations, which do account for space-time curl, background EM, and the other factors that aren't zero. Yeah. And what he did is he said, okay, all these mathematics are way too complicated and there's too many of these equations. I'm going to take this and summarize it by assuming that background equivalent distribution of electric and magnetic fields is inherently always zero, meaning that in any given volume of space compared to any other volume of space, because three-dimensional objects, they occupy a volume of space, and not all points on that three-dimensional object experience equal forces from their surrounding particles and background radiation. Mm-hmm. So what he said is, we're just going to assume that the background radiation or transmitted radiated fields in all of space are equal to zero and equivalent everywhere. Well, Maxwell didn't have that problem in his equations, which is why his equations work. And Heaviside basically took those down, summed it up to zero, and created 4 really nice, easily engineered equations for basically functional application using Maxwell stuff, but in a much easier way to understand and compute. Unfortunately, people think that Heaviside's 4 modified equations are Maxwell's original total set of equations, and when you go back to the history and you look at the original set of mathematics, you see that there is, in fact, a whole lot of stuff going on that you can engineer in terms of space-time physics that are simply not even available or recognized if you assume that all EM background is zero.
Yeah, fascinating. I believe Maxwell's first book was full of quaternions, wasn't it? Instead of vectors.
Is it?
I'm not even sure what his first book is. I've read his stuff, but I don't know his.
I should really review all of his his original literature. That would be cool.
Yeah, his first book, because the other books were rewritten. His first book was written by him.
There's also a fifth equation that's not included in Maxwell's equation, but that's the continuity equation here for charge conservation. But that kind of makes it all work. But Yeah, back to what I was saying about the two photons originally had momentum going in the same direction, but when they destructively interfere, where does the photon momentum go? The photon momentum should add. They shouldn't they shouldn't minus or cancel. They should add.
Okay, so I actually have an answer to that question, and it's based on 3 different papers that I've read. I'm not going to try to recall exactly what their names are, just off the top of my head. But what they basically say is this: they were photon cross-section interactions. One of the experiments involves 3 photons simultaneously, and the other one involves just 2 photons. The third one involves 2 photons being sent simultaneously, and a third monitor photon that's a replicated version of one of the two, and it basically disappears at one spot, reappears at the other. So, what? Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Let me give you guys a chance to speak too.
And the other thing I wanted to point out is that what's actually happening there is at that point where this destructive interference is actually there's a quieting of the vacuum noise that takes place.
That is exactly right. So what they found when they tested these experiments is that when the 2 photons cross paths in the same volume of space and they are destructive interference, they effectively disappear during the amount of time that they would spend traversing that distance, which is the total thickness of their wavelength longitudinally. And then when they come out the other side, they reappear as if nothing had happened. But there's a quirk here. This is where the third photon experiment of the photon cloaking stuff comes in. So the third photon travels through the same space that the other 2 destructively interfering photons travel through, and during the time that it enters that space, it disappears for a longer period of time than it should. It totally disappears, and the thing is, that third photon is technically not interacting with the first 2 photons. It's intersecting them at 35 point something degrees. I forget what exactly the angle is. Anyways, it's really not interacting with those 2 photons. I believe so. No. I think that's how they did it. But the thing is, it just doesn't interact because both photons are coming in from both other directions. So on either side of that photon that's traveling through the center, it shouldn't be doing anything, but yet it completely disappears. It's no longer reactive in that space. We can't monitor it. And then it just pops out the other side, a little bit delayed. And so what does that tell us about what's going on in the destructive interference zone in the physical volumetric space that the 2 photons are passing each other? Well, it tells us that there's something really, really strange going on with the way that time flows, and there is a squeezing of light that happens in that area. And that squeezed light has unique properties that we can utilize for propulsion.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. We're getting ready to build the light ships, the Pleiadian light ships, or whatever you want to call them.
You should pop up a video real quick just for for a minute.
What's that?
I just show you guys kind of like what I'm working on to the audience.
Yeah. Well, you can do. Can you do a screen share?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think I can just. I'm on my cell phone right now, so let's see how I do this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've got video showing right now. I mean, you just have to put me on.
There we go. I got you on. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see me flip this.
What up?
And okay, yeah. So basically, this is what I've been working on. It's my first glider design. Now, this whole thing, this is a 54-inch. Let me see if I can tilt this on the side. I hope this is showing right. 54-inch wingspan. This entire thing only weighs 16.5 grams so far. So that's the inside of the fuselage. Now, I've got a set of small multipliers that I'm working on to power these wings. And so far, based on my initial testing, and I'll show you guys this. This is my very small wing that's just a test section. This is 8 inches long, and out of this wing, I was able to achieve 2.5 grams of direct thrust. Now, mind you, this wing doesn't weigh 2.5 grams. It's less than that. So
yeah,
I have more thrust than the weight of the actual wing itself, and I can provide direct power to propulsion without any moving parts, without the extra need of ancillary thrust modules at the bottom or different collection plates like the MIT version. Yeah. And because of that, I can get true aerodynamic efficiency using a laminar flow over the wing surface instead of this incredibly low, this incredibly high drag assembly. And I expect to be able to do basically what MIT took 780 watts and 5.5 pounds of airplane and do something that should be able to perform for about 15 times to 20 times longer at a weight of no more than 35 grams.
Did you check out Carr's patent on like the wing within a wing? Another person who worked on that years before that was Da Vinci. He had like a wing within a wing type of little wooden airplane he used to throw around.
I'm not sure about the wing within a wing thing. I mean, this is basically just a glider. It's that's only the first wing. It's going to have a tail fin and all that other stuff, but it won't have any ailerons or rudders. It will use ions to actually steer itself and control its angle of attack.
So another guy we got to get a hold of and try to talk to is David Pares of Space. He's a space warp drive researcher, and you'd be interested in some of the wings and the things that he's working on with his lifters, because he's actually doing some research with fractal crystals and fractal antennas for those like that surface, that 3D printed wing structures.
I want to talk to that guy. I've seen
we should get a hold of him, man.
And he. Like basically, he came up with his own theory, or at least he says he kind of came up with his own theory of modification of the conventional physics. But really, what he's done is realize the full potential of Maxwell's and Faraday's knowledge about the electromagnetic background and how EM really travels, what electricity really is. And in doing so, he's been able to show real effects in video. Now they're nowhere near as cinematic and amazing as the impulse experiments with superconductors, no flying smoke or anything. Yeah, laser beam moves a little bit, but nevertheless, the fact that you can actually manipulate a physical object in atmosphere with power levels that are, I mean, by satellite standards, fairly low, with exertion of force that's many times greater than even ion thrusters used in space right now using xenon propellants, that's a pretty damn impressive thing. And it makes the EM drive look like a toy.
Right.
I would love to talk to that guy. He's
kidding.
a knowledge trove.
Definitely. He's been pretty open. I have his email too, so we should we'll have to reach out to him. And I actually had
a gray beard on. It'd be great.
I had a mutual contact who knew him give me his email and told him I was going to be contacting him and get him on for an interview. And that was about a year ago or so ago before I got wrapped up in lots of other stuff. So yeah, I mean we should reach out to this guy soon and bring him on board. See what he has to share with us and say this guy's done a ton of really awesome research, and he spent years developing a lot of this stuff. So I mean the ship that he showed wasn't super, the most impressive thing, but it's definitely still in development on this technology. Really cool stuff though. What do you got going on?
Oh, in terms of the lab? Well, right now I'm just trying to complete the airframe on this thing. Yeah. And that's been a pretty large challenge. It's always a good reminder to realize how much you suck at something until you have to do it for the first time, and it's a learning curve. So yeah. I've just basically watched a whole lot of YouTube videos and figured out how to make what would normally be a 90-gram craft weigh less than 20 grams with no batteries or supply. And thank you, YouTube, and thank you, Copter Dude, and other channels that show you how to do it. So that's my main goal right now. Just get this one thing done with the ion propulsion. And then after that is basically established, we can move on to EM propulsion and all of the other various things. I'm still doing those experiments in the meantime.
What do you think
about? It's just that they're not my primary focus.
What do you think about YouTube, our main medium for reaching big audiences, going pretty much fucking corporate and shutting down all these small channels who built YouTube and working?
What really sucks is that it's all becoming shadow banned, and even channels that don't disclose anything particularly dangerous or threatening, just that I would say show opinions that might be socially abnormal, they're getting shadow banned.
Yes.
Andreas, for example, I mean, come on, talking about Tartaria, why is he getting shadow banned? I've been watching that stuff too. It's ridiculous what's going on, really. And I can't believe the amount of control and exertion over content that I'm seeing unfold in front of me right now across YouTube, and not just there, but pretty much every other major platform. It's strange. Places like Metacafe, I hate that platform. I honest to God do. But they're not really suppressing in the same way that YouTube is at all. And videos will pop up there, be there for a month, and then be gone. Sometimes they'll only be there for a few days.
The thing about YouTube that used to be awesome is that you could just tap into such a huge audience and get get access to lots of people that were searching for the things that you were talking about. But
Well, that hasn't changed. You
that's
still can tap into a huge audience as long as you're a good little boy and you play the
yeah,
public message with your
exactly.
mouth.
Right, you gotta basically toe the status quo and don't say anything that's out of line or unusual or anything like that. And that's like I have a real hard time doing that.
Yeah,
But
even professors that had alternate theories that were pretty much cutting edge but weren't in the textbooks yet have been
yes,
completely fired,
that's
lost
how
their
it's
tenure over basically sharing what was the new cutting edge physics that was proven. I mean, some of
years
the
later,
stuff I've heard
right?
people get fired for, like people won Nobel Prizes for discovering later, and I'm
Yeah.
betting you that the dean of the college felt awfully salty after that stuff happened for these
Oh,
cases.
it's happened. There's probably numerous cases. But we
Oh
could
yeah,
go through and find
it's a
PhDs
real
awarded
problem.
for stuff that was laughed at and people were fired for and probably committed suicide over it. Friggin' 10 years ago, they made the discovery and didn't get the, you know what I mean? Didn't get the. So I don't know. It's pretty crazy. I think we need to get a hold of more people. To join forces with and just keep what we're doing. I think what we're doing is good, and I'm glad that the people I've met over the past year or two, and the people I've known for longer than that. It's I really am happy to see it all coming together this way, and getting different people on board with different ideas and sharing them all. Pushing towards the same goal and getting information out and working on experiments that bring us closer to getting off this fucking planet.
Yeah, no kidding.
I was just looking at this, Richard Feynman's book here. I have his physics books and
Hell yeah.
electricity in the atmosphere. And if you actually look at it, like they explain that, like
you get
as you go up
700
higher,
megawatts, 400,000 volts. It's a wonderful chapter. Everybody should read that particular chapter because Feynman put his entire task force, his whole student class body to work on this one problem. He said, students, I want you to calculate out based on the information that I provided you, which he did his research and provided it for his students, what the actual amount of potential is from the ionosphere to the surface of Earth. And I want you to figure out how much current is flowing down through that resistance of the atmosphere. So they did, and they used the best information that was available, and based on his calculations, it's 700 million watts.
And as he explains, the higher you go up in the atmosphere, the more voltage there is. Actually, it's 100 volts per meter. And
it's not linear, by the way, but yeah, I mean that's the base at the ground level.
Well, like if you read his chapter, it's explaining it in a sense, But anyways, like if you realistically think about it, you could almost use the energy that is like the higher you go, the more electricity or whatever you can gain to augment your craft as it accelerates, if you could take advantage of that potential.
Exactly. And then you get into the MHD drives, because there's something that's even more advantageous than simply the fact that you have this potential. The trouble with being in the ionosphere in a highly charged atmosphere, whether or not you're in the negative boundary layer or you're in the highly charged boundary layer that's getting the direct solar emissions, you have these charged particles, and the great thing about charged particles is that they react to electric charges and magnetic fields. So conveniently, you have a supercharged fuel source that effectively acts like nitrous for your ion engine, and using much less energy, you can propel yourself along when you're at 70,000 to 100,000 feet up with incredibly high efficiency and virtually no air resistance using ion engines.
Wow.
It's a great technology.
Yeah, man, it's a breeze. That's why,
specifically, I got more information for you. On this plane, I am developing an MHD drive. I've got another guy that's working on this stuff who lives in New Mexico, is programming a couple of microgram PICs, 8-channel outputs that are going to do a sequential step drive into a high voltage pulse power supply, which will have plates basically aligned from front to back on the wing surface. And so at high altitudes, instead of all these wing surfaces being grounded for raw power and ion acceleration like they will at low altitudes and high altitudes, this wing will basically be able to take the charged ions in the atmosphere and run them via MHD by putting electric charges with differentiating pulsed power sequentially down the plates, just like a sequencer, for MIDI or something like that.
So, like, I've noticed, like, the full potential to get out of these craft has to be, like, a center of balance, center of gravity type shape. So, like, discs, squares, triangles, and, like, you're able to just push on a corner and move it little because it's moving at such fast speeds. You
I
only
also
need,
think
like, a
it's
little
interesting
touch
that
of energy.
saucers are
I
like a
mean,
bell
yeah, it's
shaped.
true.
I wonder if that has anything to do with resonance. Someone pointed out, like, oh, it's like shaped like a bell. I wonder if resonance plays any effect on how to get these, standing waves on the surface.
The bell
Yeah.
shape is the bell shape and the disc shape are generally used for systems that have a symmetrical discoid drive system, which could either be gyroscopic or inertial. Meaning, no, it's not gyroscopic entirely, but it has some kind of stored inertia in a physical moving part, which could be a liquid, it could be a superfluid, it could be a vapor, a plasma, or just a plain gas, or it could also be a solid disc or a solid shaped flywheel. Any of these things that can store inertia effectively can be momentum converted, just as we talked about earlier, because photons effectively transfer their momentum. So when you interact the electric charges that are in place in whatever is your motional inertia carrier for stored energy, you can quickly turn that inertia into transmitted momentum, where your flywheel will slow down and you will accelerate to a great degree, using electric fields to steer those momentum charges and redirect the tensors.
That's awesome. Yes. Yes, yes, and more yes.
So another thing I've also picked up was like magnetohydrodynamics will actually leave an imprint as it moves. And I've noticed that, like, if you see crop circles, some crop circles, not all, but some crop circles, you can actually take them, stick them in a CAD program. 'Cause I've actually seen some
I've
guy on
watched these
YouTube
too,
do
man,
that.
and I
yeah,
love
and
that
he
stuff.
turn them into 3D
Yeah.
blueprints.
Exactly. And they're pretty
you'll
damn
actually
interesting too,
find-
aren't they?
Yeah, there's a solenoid right in the dead center of the fucking craft. Like, this is why I believe
I know
that-
which video you're talking about. It's the
Yeah.
one that features the double torus axially aligned system with the central north-south solenoid. And it's supposed to be a pulse system.
Oh,
Yeah,
should
but
we
I
post
believe-
that in the chat, in the live
I
chat, if we
believe
get a
that
link?
magnetohydrodynamic system should work with the electrostrictive hydrodynamic system as well in unison. And if you guys, like, if you could somehow work them together, you'll actually get, like, what you want, not just some little thing that flies. And
Okay, so
control.
you're dead on there. And specifically what you're saying, I recently had a conversation with I'm not going to use a name anyways, but I just had a conversation with somebody who's probably well known by almost the entire audience. And basically what he told me is that a very, very famous military craft observed at an air show was, in fact, a combination of ionic propulsion for in-atmosphere motion, MHD, using a pulsed coil and capacitor discharge system, and then finally a relativistic EM non-reactive acceleration system, which I'm still getting details on, but it is, to Jeremy's great joy, a metamaterial reaction system. So all this stuff definitely applies, though, but the ion drive system works perfectly in sync with the MHD technologies, and both of these things, ironically, affect the relativistic fields around the craft. So it all really ties together at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's exactly what I found. And not only that, like, I found that the first magnetohydrodynamic solenoid that I found was a plasma shield that was in a NASA document. Actually, it's a book, and it's on colonies and settlements. And this thing is supposed to prevent, like micrometeoroids to destroy the colony as it's twirling, right? And as we know, like, if you
What is this, like a
spin it on
shield? Or what?
they wanted to create a giant solenoid right in the middle of, like, this torus that they're going to put around the center of it, and they wanted to protect it from micrometeorites and stuff like that, and that was their idea of doing it. But, like, every NASA document that I went through had to block out all this copywritten stuff, so I couldn't actually deeply research into it. I could get the documents, but I couldn't get any pictures out of the documents as well.
I
So
hear
you
you.
literally, yeah, you literally had to use your imagination.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and it's I have the book here because I actually got they reprinted it on Amazon.
Yeah, let's
Just
see if we
gotta-
can get that book once you get it in video up on screen. I don't
Yeah.
see you yet, but I'm just kind of watching the main YouTube video like
yeah,
everybody
just
else.
give me a second.
In terms of magnetic fields for shielding and destroying micrometeorites, there is another technology that Boeing, not Boeing. Jesus, who is it? Maybe it was Boeing. I'm really trying to remember who made it. Anyways, it's a tank or vehicle shielding system. It can supposedly be used on aircraft too. And what this thing does is effectively when a kinetic projectile is fastly traversing space directly towards the target object that needs to be shielded, the target object electrifies its hull with an extremely strong electrostatic charge, and it continuously pumps out this electrostatic charge, building up an ionic field and EM bubble around itself, using nothing but purely voltage and a holy crap load of it. So, I am almost sure it's Boeing. Anyways, the way that they did it, they didn't use voltage multipliers and Marx generators or large capacitor banks or anything like that. What they actually did was they built a particle type Van de Graaff generator. And it was able to develop many, many millions of volts in a fairly small footprint. And what this thing effectively does is as a projectile flies towards this field that it enters, the sheer volts per meter that the object has to travel through as it gets closer and closer to the field generator causes it to develop a tremendous magnetic flux and electrostatic repulsion from the field that it's traveling through as it becomes quickly charged by ions in the air and by receiving and destroying the EM waves that hit it. And it loses its momentum, basically, and it gets sent around the EM field and pumped out the other side. And then it just drops out of the air. So it's a pretty impressive tech, and I can't believe they used a Van de Graaff generator, of all things, to do it. And I knew it's not really a conventional Van de Graaff generator. It's actually Tesla's death ray device, if you will, because what he did is he showed some patents or early patents that never got published all the way through the process. And he has this giant tower with effectively a U-shaped tube on the top connected to a U-shaped tube in the bottom, and he just simply pumps charges up one side by ionizing the internal rarefied air, which just means dry, regular atmospheric air. They're collected on the top, and he says the system can develop hundreds of millions of volts potentially. And using that voltage, he can put a tiny little hole in a mercury-containing vessel, and the force that the mercury particles will be repelled from themselves with is so strong that they can slice through airplanes at some 20 miles.
Wow.
So that's a pretty interesting tech. And all it does is rely on pure DC voltage. It's not a fantastical Hutchinson-like AC phenomena. It is just literally just really, really friggin' high voltage and a stream of particles that happen to align because of that potential.
Wow.
It's shockingly simple. And all this stuff is
that's what I
disclosed
was
in super old papers that anybody can download.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I figured too. Yeah, like it's just high voltage. Like less amperage, almost the better, and it almost makes sense too. Like if you actually look at the water patents from Meyer, he created a special transformer that literally transforms amperage into voltage, and it accelerates up. And he says that was his magic trick to actually separate hydrogen and oxygen. And only that, he understood covalent bonding to a degree that a lot of people couldn't grasp.
Oh man, you are absolutely right.
Yeah, because he was actually literally starving argon and then doping it with a spark gap of iron and nickel and cobalt.
So let's talk about.
And it was bonding to each other, and then it went. Hold on a sec, just one more second.
I'm falling asleep, guys. I'm not great.
Sorry, guy. And it went through a magnetic a piece there and realigned the entire magnetic structure as it went through the tube. So therefore, it acted like a permanent magnet in a sense. But anyways, yeah. Sorry, I'll let you guys talk.
I think Jeremy needs to.
I wish I
he's
didn't
getting a
have to
little
work
tired.
tomorrow. I wish I could get paid to do this all day. But
Yeah, I got to work tomorrow too, man. I got to build a deck and a fence, and it's gonna suck.
All I've got to do is build some anti-gravity tech and fix some show lights.
Have fun.
Yeah. See you guys on the other side of the day.
hey, let's
Hey,
do
it's
it
been a
again
great
soon,
conversation.
man. I wish we did it sooner. I gotta find a day where this is the only day I had where I'm falling asleep. I can't do it. More normally, it's like I'm like this before I even can get it started. So I'll have to. I got some time coming up though. We're gonna kick it in the ass in the next couple weeks though. I want to get Jeremiah to come down and we'll get all our technicians together and see if we can't work on some stuff in the lab too. So we're gonna talk about that soon. But and I also want to check out Sky's engine and all that stuff too, man. So we're gonna keep it going, and we'll keep our crew updated here. And anyone else that has information or stuff that they want to share with us, and any disclosure they want to get out, man, thealienscientists@gmail.com, and get hooked up if you're a gravity propulsion researcher. Get hooked up with our WhatsApp group so you can share your research and information and learn about some of the stuff that we're digging into too as well.
Yeah,
So,
we have learned so much from that group.
oh yeah, level up hard. It's like
Big time.
One up.
Yes, guys, everyone needs to level up. We got too many level friggin' 1 newbies running around this game, and
Well, we've been saying it since January, man. 2020 is the year.
2020 is the year. Everyone's gonna level up, and we're all gonna get leveled up. I love that. Awesome. Thanks for that, Life Apologist, and all those who contributed in the live chat tonight. Thank you guys very much, and have a great night. And thanks for joining us.
Peace, dude.
Take it easy, guys.